What's happening? It's Ryan. It is Wednesday, November 29th, and there's a huge difference. I've talked about this before. I feel like I beat this to death, but there's a huge difference. What is this? Oh, that's on there. The difference between driving in Baltimore and driving in DC is absolutely mind-blowing. I feel like I harp on this, and I think I do so because it's such a huge part of my life. The traffic in my area controls everything I do day to day. When I get up, when I leave the house, my stress level, my insanity level, it affects everything I do. And it's maddening. So here's a clip on what my morning looked like yesterday driving into Baltimore. Good morning. It is Tuesday, November 28th, and the sun has just come up. Got a little bit of traffic, but I'll tell you what, there's something so much more relaxing about driving into Baltimore than driving into DC. This traffic is not even a quarter mile, and it's all gonna fall off. All the different directions people are going is gonna take shape, and this traffic will just be easy to manage. And then here's a clip. Not a clip, but here's what it looks like when I'm driving in DC. I mean, look at this. It's absolutely wall-to-wall traffic, and it's 9:20. 9:20, you would think, why are there so many people on the road? Why aren't they already at work? It's crazy to me. I just can't get past. So I've talked about it and kind of teased it in the past that I'm a rube for anything that Apple puts out. I'm invested in their ecosystem. Anything they put out, I buy. I mean, I have the AirPods, the ugliest headphone set ever. So, anything they put out, I'm gonna invest in. But that hasn't always been the case. And I wanted to kind of talk about how I got to that point of being so heavily invested in this company. And I think to start, I have to go back and mention, as a kid, I had a really hard time in school. I had ADD. That was before ADHD was a thing. Then I was diagnosed with ADHD and a little bit of dyslexia, just all kinds of struggles in terms of learning disabilities that while I tried, I just had a hard time in school. But something I was really good at was just understanding how things worked mechanically and not having a fear of taking something apart and trying to figure out how to put it back together. I mean, I would take apart my parents' VCRs, the vacuum cleaners, and sometimes I didn't get them all back together right away. Sometimes they didn't get back together at all. But I really enjoyed figuring out how things worked. And to jump ahead, when I got into college, my end of my freshman year, beginning of my sophomore year, was the first year that computers were really available to the masses. You had companies like Gateway and Dell that were coming out with these computers that everyday consumers could purchase. So my parents got me a computer. I was really big into downloading music. Around the same time Napster was released. So I can remember going to bed and picking one song I wanted to download, clicking on it, going to sleep, waking up, and it was like this crazy idea that this song was now on my computer. Keep in mind, these were being downloaded over 56K dial-up modem, so it took forever. But at that time, I was really looking to make CDs, and these, I guess you could say mixtapes, but they were mixed CDs. And so for Christmas, I asked my parents for a writable CD drive so I could take this music and copy it onto discs. which they got me, but not knowing anything about computers, they bought me an internal CD-ROM, which had to be installed. And I had never opened up a computer, but rather than returning it, I figured I'm gonna open this thing up and see if I can install it. How hard can it be? And it was super easy. I was blown away with how easy it was to install this CD-ROM. So from that point, I started then doing all these upgrades and adding things to my computer, and which led to buying parts and cases in bulk online and starting to build computers for friends and selling computers, and it just took on this life. And these were all PCs, so it took on this life of me taking advantage of my comfort with building things and putting things together to get into playing and fiddling around with computers. So I did that for a number of years. I did that all through college, and halfway out of college, then I got to a point where we had Jackson, our first son, our oldest son, our only son, and I started then videotaping everything. Firstborn, you've got to get everything on tape. So I was videotaping everything that this kid did, and in turn I wanted to take that videotape and I wanted to make movies out of it. So I took the camera with the footage on it, I plugged it into my PC, and I got an error message that my RAM wasn't high enough and wasn't compatible with the software I was trying to run. So I run to Best Buy or CompUSA and I buy more RAM. Then I get an error message that the graphics card wasn't high enough. And this kept going on until I'd spent hundreds of dollars to try to get this to work. And I knew there had to be a better way. I knew there had to be a solution that was easier to take this footage from my video camera and make a movie out of it. Thus the introduction of my first Mac. So I get a Mac computer, I plug it in for the first time, and all this footage just imports. iMovie had this great wizard that walked you through how to edit the movies and how to do all these things with the footage. And I was blown away with how easy it was. And that really was the antithesis to my addiction to this company. I mean, now to walk through the house, we have 4 laptops. It's crazy. One's for my wife's work, 2 for the kids. I have one. I have an iMac that I don't really use too much. I mean, a Mac Mini. We have 4 iPads. One's the iPad Pro, an Apple Watch, 3 phones. Everything's Mac, Apple TV. Everything in this house is circling around this company, and it all works. It's all super easy, and that's what made me convert from PC to Apple. Was it just works. There's nothing difficult about it. There's very few errors you get. Maybe it's an error is you need to upgrade this software, but everything just works. And I went from a point where I was building computers and turned into an IT consultant for the people I built these computers with, because the PCs weren't working, they were downloading malware and all these issues that I wasn't having those issues on my Macs. And I stopped building computers, and I've just gone into that ecosystem. Now I'll say, since the passing of Steve Jobs, I don't feel like the innovation has been there. The company always seems to be playing catch up. The iPhone 10 now has wireless charging. Samsung's had it forever. The screen display is finally caught up to where it should be when compared to these other phones. And to this day, I'll tell you, if I could get the iOS operating system on a Samsung device, Samsung's hardware is gorgeous. I would switch tomorrow to Samsung's hardware if I could run iOS. What keeps me there is just the ease of use with their operating system on both the phone and their computers. I get it if you're a techie and you say, Apple's very restrictive, and Apple doesn't allow me to customize my phone. You're right, it doesn't. And I think that's what allows it to be seamless and allows it to just work, is everything's built in-house. Almost everything's built in-house. So you can't mess anything up. Everything talks to each other because it's all built by the same company. It's like a car. You don't buy a Mercedes, but your tires are Honda and your engine is Ferrari. Everything's built by Mercedes for the most part. And if you Frankenstein this car together, you're gonna have issues. Same thing with these computers. So unless you're a techie person and know how to fix problems, I just find Apple's much easier to use. And my only gripe right now with Apple is I wish the hardware of their mobile device was as pretty as Samsung's is. But I'll tell you, the new iPhone 10, I need to do more of, not a comprehensive review because you can get those from other YouTubers, but I love the phone. It's probably the best iPhone I've had to date outside of the very first iPhone that came out. But I love the phone, it's great. So that's kind of some insight into why I'm such an Apple fanboy. I try to be a realist and look at the other things that are out there, but I've really found for myself, for what I'm looking to do out of this is the best solution. I don't have to worry about upgrading graphics cards and updating RAM. Everything just works, and I love it.